Okay, starting up the recording again. Whenever you're ready. Welcome, everybody.
Let's go. Ready. What up, y'all? It's Dmajor here. We're our co-host Requiet. We're talking about teaching games because I like talking about teaching and I like playing games. And I know sometimes people have a hard time with, feeling confident about their teach. Maybe they feel like it might be too long, or they feel like maybe players are getting confused. There might be a lot of different things that come up. So we want to encourage everybody to ask questions in the chat as much as they like, and Rec will be helping me keep up with that. We can go through it, and without further ado, we can jump in this. Next slide. And first off, happy birthday, Grizz. I know Grizz might not be here, but if you know Grizzly, go ahead and wish him a happy birthday. He just had a kid. And always nice to share some birthday joy. So take a second and just say happy birthday. Appreciate it. Alright, next slide. So first things first, when you're getting started with your playtest, like I said, you might have a concern with the teaching taking too long. This first slide is to address some of those concerns. First thing, I know a lot of people here do playtesting on virtual tabletops, and this also works if you're doing it in person. One of the most important things you can do before you start teaching your game is make sure your table is prepared with everything you need to play. We've all been in a situation or had a situation where we're teaching the game or somebody's teaching us one of their games. And they're like, oh, this isn't updated, or oh, give me a second, let me change this. Those kinds of things add a lot of time, and you don't want the person who's already dedicated a certain amount of time to playing your game to feel like they're sitting there waiting for you to edit it, fix things. That should all be taken care of before you start.
On that note,
yeah,
Kara, did you ever finish updating MOBA?
Oh yeah, it's dope. The updates on there are amazing. Click of a button, it makes the game. It takes 10-15 minutes off the game. So nice. that was really great additions. But yeah, just having everything prepared before you start is going to help that person stay engaged and immersed, and it's going to make you feel a lot more confident and comfortable when it comes into teaching. Because those disruptions can make you kind of more anxious and nervous. So just take some time. People might be eager to play and try to press you, but if you know you need to make some updates, just make sure you take that time to do it first. Another thing that can be really good to do before you even start the game is figure out how you can reduce your win condition, especially if you have a game this long. Now, some people make games where it might only take 10 to 15 minutes. So the whole concept of cutting the win con in half might not be necessary. But if you have a game that maybe on average takes maybe an hour to play or 2 hours or even more, you can consider ways to reduce the win condition where people will still get the full experience of what it's like to play a game. And you also have the added benefit of when you get to the halfway point to ask them if they want to continue and play a full game, or if you want to stop and get feedback. You generally don't have to play a full game for someone to understand it, or to even get feedback if that's what you're looking for from your playtesters.
I would also like to recommend, not only cutting the win con in half, but sometimes starting the game preset. So starting the game halfway through and just walking them through the steps of what happened to get there, and then playing from that midway point in longer games has helped me and some other board gamers that I know abbreviate their experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially depending on, some games might take a while to get to a certain build before you're actually quote unquote playing the game. Having things that can start them off or medium point is definitely another good tip. So appreciate that. And Karin, you don't necessarily have to keep people engaged and immersed outside the game, but if you can, I think it'll increase that experience. Some people just have a flair. People how their day is, what they got going, working on. Sometimes just warming up the conversation that also can help with a lot of anxiety. Now you don't want to talk so long that you're not playing your game, but just feeling a little bit more comfortable talking with somebody, especially if it's someone you don't normally interact with, make it a lot easier to just go in and teach it. Right, like if I'm in a classroom, I'm not gonna go in and say, "All right, today we're talking about music. Let's go. Here's what we're doing." No, I want to know how people are feeling, what they're doing, how their day has been, because it just helps us all feel more comfortable. So that's an easy way you can keep somebody immersed outside the game. But appreciate the question. Again, we welcome any questions in the chat. We appreciate it. And Rec, unless you have anything else in terms of getting started and preparing, you can go to the next one. All right, so it's not going to be a long talk, but this next section is going to be about different teaching tactics, and these are going to be different ways that you can reduce the complexity, and just make the teaching experience a lot more engaging and smooth if you're having trouble with that. Mayonnaise is an instrument, absolutely. All right, next slide. Appreciate it. So, if y'all are anything like me, I much prefer to learn the game by playing the game. Similar to like in the classroom, some people are visual learners. A lot of people are, we'll say they're hands-on learners. Like being able to go through the motions and doing the things that the game requires you to do is a really strong way of retaining that information. So I would say unless somebody expressly says that, no, just tell me everything up front, because there are some people that like that. Ultimately, teaching is about knowing what kind of learner you have in front of you and catering what you're doing to them as best as you can. But most people, they don't like it. And some people will say they do, but don't even pay attention. You don't have to answer all the same questions when you play. So I would highly avoid doing a lecture or anything more than a 5-minute explanation of what's going on in your game up front. Because you can lose the player in terms of they're just not going to retain what you're saying. But it also, it can make people afraid to ask questions. Like I play games where I've gotten a 20-minute lecture, and then they're like, "Okay, now we're ready to play. Any questions?" Yes, I have questions, but I'm not gonna say yes because you might give me another 20-minute lecture, and now I gotta wait 40 minutes to start playing the game. So you don't want to give the person the impression that if they ask you a question, they're gonna, get a much longer response than maybe they're looking for at that time. And one of those ways is focusing on what's the win condition, how do I win the game, how do I read my cards, especially if you don't have a ton of card types. That usually is enough for people to start playing the game. And playing against someone that already knows how to play or having reference cards on the table can be another way for people to like look up information that they need while they're playing. The reference cards also are really useful because they can work as a script as well. You don't have to necessarily write out a full script or what you're going to say every step of the way when you play your game. But having a reference card is a guide for these are the really important things you need to know. And if you ever forget it, here's where you can go back to. That's going to cut the time down a lot in terms of getting started with the plan.
So, Dave,
do you have any thoughts on that, Rick? Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, you talk about the different learning styles. How does that apply to gaming? I know we've heard about visual learners or spatial learners or physical learners. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I find that a lot of people do tend to be hands-on learners in terms of by being able to play through the game actions. It's easier to retain that information. You also have a lot of people that learn well through reading about the game. So you might have someone that asks to read your rule book before they play. Not that they'll necessarily know how to play perfectly after reading the rule book, but it will give them better understanding. So when they start playing and going through those motions, they feel more comfortable. Which is, I think, reference cards are a really nice middle ground between the two, because it's not so much information where you're reading an entire rule book, but it's enough where if somebody learns best by just reading, sometimes I get distracted by people talking. I'm like, just wait a second, just let me read this card, and then I'll know how to play. So that's another thing about being prepared. You want to set your table up to cater to different learning styles, so particularly hands-on or reading, because it's going to give more accessibility to everyone. Someone that doesn't want to read anything to play the game can just have you teach them through playing, and that'll be totally fine. And the reference card there is not going to bother them because they're just not going to look at it. But for someone that does need it or it is helpful to, it's a great resource. So it really just helps everybody, even if only some people use it.
So what are some things that you like to include on your reference cards? Anything out of the norm besides just a quick how to play?
It's really important to have like what your turn actions are. Not anything that's like really like intricate or nuanced, but if it's my turn, this is what I can do. That's going to be really important. And then also having one that has maybe any, and this is something that you will get after you play more, but things that might not be as intuitive, like kind of like your frequently asked questions. Like if somebody has a grid-based game, a lot of times they'll be like a term like adjacent. And the first thing someone's going to think is, well, what's adjacent mean? Is that every direction? Is that just the cardinal directions? So just being mindful of like things of that nature, where it might not be super clear just from reading the card. Your cards might have symbols on them, so definitely having a reference card that says this symbol means this, that symbol means that, just so people can understand what a card, what kind of information that is conveying to them.
Okay.
Yeah, turn actions, key terms, those are always really good.
We've got a couple comments in the chat. I don't know if you want to go over any of those. 39 asks, wait, so are we not supposed to tell a person how to win, or what is on the card, or am I misreading the PowerPoint?
Oh yeah, you absolutely want to tell someone how to win. In terms of the slide, that is the most important information in terms of getting somebody started. So if it's like, if you're like, I want to be able to have someone start this game as soon as possible, main thing they need to know is how do I win, and what do these cards mean? And I think if you focus on that, they'll be able to pick up a lot of the other things that are happening while the game's going on. We'll have some other tips about that too. That's a good question. Yeah, 100%. First thing you tell somebody is how to win. If you explained a bunch and they ask you, so how do I win? You started from the wrong spot.
Kara wants to add, pro tip, the best way to teach someone new with as little words as possible is to draw a straight line from start to finish in these steps. Step 1, how do I win? Step 2, what do I do to win? And step 3, how do I take my turn? Only tell them what is absolutely necessary to play. Small rules, don't bother. Do you agree with that, D?
Oh, 100%. Good tip right there.
Johnny wanted to add, so like a bullet point card of what you need to tell them when teaching?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why, like I said, reference card can be helpful. That can be your bullet pointed list. And it kind of breaks down exactly what Carl was saying. Like if your reference card says, this is how you win, this is what you do to achieve that, and this is what you can do on your turn. Something you can look at in terms of like walking through the game. But I've definitely like played games with people where they have like an actual script that they go through when they play, and it works out well. And it's nice if you are somebody that gets kind of nervous and anxious and maybe feel like you have a hard time just kind of riffing, might forget something, having the thing you just read off usually doesn't bother people, and it makes sure that you're going through what you need to and of not getting caught up with things you don't need to talk about.
Okay. Next up, we have DT Buckle.
Appreciate all the questions.
I think of all the games I've bought and enjoyed and how I learned those games, 99% of the time I learned by playing with someone who knew the game. Very rarely have I read a manual unless I have a question. I always read the reference card.
Oh, yeah.
So, would you say that that is one of the gaming learning types? Is through a friend?
I think that's the most common. Generally, we learn games from somebody who knows how to play the game.
Okay.
Not always, but if I had my preference, like learn this game someone can teach me, or figure out how to play this game on my own, I'd probably go for the former.
What was
Certain
that?
confidence that comes with. I was gonna say there's certain confidence that comes with learning the game from someone that knows how.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might read a rule book and not know if you're playing correctly. There's no person to tell you if you are.
There was that old adage, it was like 16 degrees of separation or something. If you could play that with learning from the game designer or someone who's learned from the game designer 16 steps in,
Mm-hmm.
that would be a cool way to learn all the games. 39 comes back with, what are the main questions we should answer in a basic teach? I recognize that Kara sort of answered that, but I would like a list.
I honestly would use the list that Kara said. He actually shared a couple chats down.
Okay. So just for those watching the recording, the list includes how do I win?
How do I win? What
You got
do
it.
I do to win? How do I win? What do I do to win? And, well, what things on this card means. So yeah, how do I read the cards? And what do I do on my turn? And I'd even argue that those first two are really the only things that you need to say. Because in terms of the what do I do on my turn, I find the best way to teach someone is you take your turn first. I know how to play the game, I'll take the first turn. And while I do my turn actions, I'll say, okay, on my turn I can do this, so I'm going to do it. And on my turn I can do that, so I'm going to do that. And now it's your turn.
Okay.
And someone seeing it cuts down the time. Because now you don't have to explain it and then show them again. You can do it at the same time. It's like the teaching method of I do, we do, you do. So first you want to demonstrate what the person is doing. And you do it together. And then ideally they're able to do it on their own.
That's the good stuff. So Jasenia says, I think clear and non-complicated reference cards are really helpful for quick learning. I'm not an auditory learner, and I'm definitely someone who reads the manual. Lol. The game won't make sense to my brain if I don't.
Absolutely. And that's why I say it's really great to have your board and your teach set up to cater to both of those styles.
And finally, before we move on,
Yep.
Johnny wanted to add, okay, cool. I was worried about always taking the first turn was going to mess it up.
Oh, absolutely not. Letting them take the first turn might make them feel like, I don't know what to do. And they're just going to ask you, can you just take my turn for me? At that point, you could have just taken your own turn.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I don't think it's going to mess it up. Appreciate all the engagement, y'all. It's great seeing the different learning styles in the chat. So now y'all see how important it is.
DT Buckle threw in, as the creator of the game, you understand how it works best. That means you have the most control over how the play session goes, especially if you are one of the players.
Yep. You know what's strong, you know how to give them a challenge, you know how to pull back.
Okay, and 39...
Right, we'll get back to these questions.
Okay.
We're going to go to the next slide, and we'll get back to the questions. So keep sharing. Really appreciate y'all. Alright, look at Boomy. There are no takesies backsies in my kingdom. Hey, don't be Boomy. You're teaching your games. This kind of goes into the whole idea of teaching while you're playing. So once you've provided them the resources to either read or give them a quick rundown of the basics, you can start playing. And it's a takesies backsies free environment. Someone plays something and then they find out how it works and they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. Let them know you don't have to. You can take it back. This is not serious. And that'll give them more comfortability in just doing things and seeing how it works. Just messing around and finding out. I'm gonna do this. Does that work the way I thought? No, it doesn't. Okay, cool, I'll get it back. If they feel hard committed into it, it also can cause them to think longer in their turns and to feel a lot more unconfident in their gameplay. Now, ideally, they're watching and observing and learning the game well enough where they don't have to, keep misplaying, because that can be bad. But being in that environment where it feels safe to fail and you're not going to be punished for it is going to lead for a much better experience.
I think you said something really important right there. Feeling safe to fail. I think that's an important thing in life in general, but especially in teaching games. You want to lighten the load as much as possible. And giving people that take backsies is a huge step in that comfort zone. So I'm 100% for take backsies. I've had very competitive players play my game and refuse take backsies, and that's on them. But I encourage them whenever possible because I want the player to have fun, feel clever, do the interesting thing. And if you're locked into a decision, you don't really get that opportunity most of the time when you're first learning a game.
Yeah, those losses can sting. Like you make a play and you're locked into it and it sucked. Now the whole game you're losing and you're just thinking about it. Dang, shouldn't have done that. I'm so stupid. People can be very self-conscious and negative. And sometimes they'll blame themselves, sometimes they'll blame your game. But in either situation, it's not a great experience or a good feeling. So by, doing your best to remove that, by creating that safe environment, it's okay if oh, this play would have been better and now I realize it. Okay, do that instead. That's fine. And with that, there's also the power of the practice round. And this can be helpful for maybe those people that are more like, no, I want to play the game the way it's supposed to be played. You can utilize a practice turn or practice round where they get to go through the motions and play the game. And if it goes bad for them, you can always say, well, that was our practice round. You preface it beforehand. But, that also is another way to create that safety net. Where I played a couple turns, I understand how the game works now. Instead of continuing the game in a bad position, we get to start over now that you know how to play. That can be really powerful.
D, do you have any tips on practice rounds for longer games that might have a more involved turn?
There's some other tips that are going to come up for what can help out with that in a longer game. But generally, I would think about what's a number of turns where you feel like somebody will get a good understanding of the turn actions, which generally could be like 2 or 3. I don't think it takes a ton of turns to understand how a game is working, unless it's really complicated. And at that point, I would think about what are some aspects of the game you can eliminate from that first playtest, which is still the game, but simplifies it. I feel like rarely do you have to incorporate every single aspect a game has to offer in somebody's first playtest, nor should you, because it can be very overwhelming. This might be a bad example, but think about like a video game that you got really far in and then you didn't play it for like 2 years and you came back and you were like, what is all this stuff? I don't remember any of this. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to fight anymore. And there are no more tutorials.
Do we want to answer some more questions or move on to the next slide?
Yeah. Let's what do we got?
Okay, so 39 was asking previously, what if I do something that I hadn't explained but did not come up earlier? Will players feel cheated?
Sometimes. I can't lie. And having a script can be really helpful in terms of making sure that you don't forget those important things. And also just being, and we'll go into this in the next slide, but being mindful of how you build the decks, where you try to not have too many nuances or like unique situations that will come up where that kind of confusion would even happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right? As the designer, you know the most about your game. You know that, oh, these cards have a weird interaction. You might want to decide, maybe I don't want this in the playtest because I don't want someone to have to deal with this interaction, and if I forget to explain it, you might feel cheated. So that's something that you could be mindful of trying to avoid. But you want to try to be ahead of it as possible. And if it does happen, sometimes you can't do anything about it. And generally, people aren't going to trip too much. There are definitely people that really want to win and feel like if you do something that you didn't explain to them, that you're like holding information from them. And they'll probably say, well, that's good to know. Or I wish I would have known that sooner. And I mean, sometimes that just happens. I would just say do your best to plan out your playtest ahead of time. Avoid those kind of complex cards, just so you don't run into those situations. That's a really good question, because that definitely happens. Well, it's happened to me.
So next up we have Johnny Tiger with, practice round is an awesome idea, but what do you do when they don't want the practice round?
Obviously, if they don't want it, then they don't have to play a practice round. Ultimately, it's their learning experience. And as a teacher, you want to try to guide them through it, not tell them how to learn. Which can be tricky. Sometimes if somebody is very obstinate and they're like not going to let you explain, and they're not going to read it, and they're going to say, no, the game should be played like this, there's only so much you can do. And, you know, you want to make sure you're taking care of yourself too. Just because this person took time out to play your game doesn't mean that they should be disrespectful or pushy or, you know, all these things. So if you're feeling negative in that space, never feel obligated to continue, because that can happen, and that's not cool for them to do that. It's like somebody was wilding in my class like that. All right, you gotta step out. You can't be in here right now acting like that.
Okay, we got another pro tip by Kara. In terms of how the designer should play when teaching, become the game director and base it off the player's status. If the player seems like they're struggling, i.e. bad board state, can't play many cards, etc., and I have reservations about reading this next line, but intentionally give them time to recover. If the player is doing relatively well, or very well, start playing optimally. They probably love the challenge. Any thoughts on that, D?
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree. And that's the strength of being the designer or being someone that's experienced in the game. Is you might be playing and see that, oh, they're not really playing much. Maybe they're not getting it. Maybe they don't have that many options. I'm not just going to kick them while they're down. You know, that's a good chance where you can offer them, hey, do you need any advice? You got any questions about anything? And I would always opt to ask if somebody wants advice first. You don't want to remove the challenge from them. You don't want them to feel like you just told me how to play and I did it and now I win. There's nothing that feels satisfying about that. Definitely checking in. And yeah, if somebody's kicking your butt, don't hold back, because they want a challenge at that point. You know, it's the same way if you're in a classroom and you get a subject really well, you don't want to keep doing the same thing. I know how to add. Stop making me add. I want to multiply. You want to keep increasing that challenge, because that's what's going to keep increasing the engagement and enjoyment. That's another really good tip. We got to get you on one of these talks, Cara.
JC threw in, I know when teaching Warcast, if a player makes a bad play, I might destroy a unit, but I won't push forward into their home zone right away to give them time to rebuild. I actually have thoughts about that. And one of the key parts about throwing a game is making it not look obvious. So I would actually ask JC a follow-up question on that one. How do you make it look either accidental or planned that you didn't want to push forward in that moment when you're put in that position? And this goes for anybody in their own games. How do you cover up your throws so that it isn't obvious to the player? Because we've all thrown games in one way or another. There's no way you teach games for a hobby like we do and haven't thrown a move here or thrown out something there. So take a second to give your responses if you don't mind. I'd love to read those personally.
Absolutely. The strongest tool you have is hidden information. Like, your opponent doesn't know what you can do. And I think that's always really important to be mindful of. If I play a card out and I can attack and destroy you and I just choose not to, and there doesn't seem to be a reason why I chose not to, then yeah, that player might feel like, oh, you're just going easy on me, you're not really playing the game. And again, that doesn't feel good. Part of teaching is you want to avoid those feel bad moments. Someone feels like you're not challenging them, it can make them think, are they not confident that I'd be able to beat them if they tried? Are they underestimating me? It's usually not a positive assumption associated with that. So, and I think that's really good, JC, that it's like, okay, I'm still going to attack you because I have my unit here. You know I can attack you. Why would I not?
I do want to go to Shiftrex's point real quick before we read any of the responses.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Honestly, teaching a game is really similar to being a dungeon master for a role-playing game in some respects. And that goes back to the director comment, which I 100% agree with. You're directing a scene when you're teaching a game for the first time as a designer. You're building this emotional symphony. You're trying to create a space where they have a desired outcome of feelings. And I think being a DM or being a director is a really good analogy for what you're doing when you're teaching games. It's not just I'm playing to win or I'm playing to balance the game. Usually in my mind, teaching is about creating a return customer, somebody who wants to play again. And that is more important than winning or losing or balancing in that moment. Because without those return people, you're never going to get those future steps. You're never going to be able to balance the game because it's always going to be a new player and you're not going to have that experience under their belt to really show you where the game is lacking.
Yeah, and it's like, there does sometimes come a point where you're just in a situation where it's like, I'm just gonna win here. And it's okay. It's not so much that you don't want the person to ever lose, because again, I don't think you want to sacrifice game integrity to let someone win, because again, that invalidates the win. If I feel like you let me win, then I don't get that same dopamine of I completed this challenge, I overcame a difficulty. It's just, oh, this person just gave me the game. But making sure that you have that ebb and flow, that you're offering advice when someone really seems stuck, but giving them the opportunity to figure out things on their own. When you're pulling back when you need to and applying pressure when they're doing well, you're still creating these really good experiences. And at the end of the day, it'll be a good game, whether they win or lose. Hopefully they win, because then it'll be a great game. But even if they don't, it's like, I still had fun. There were still good moments for me here.
Okay, so we got a lot of comments to get through. So Mage,
Y'all came through tonight. Let's go. Yeah,
heck
go
yeah.
for it.
Mage wanted to say, I'm a big believer in failure is the best teacher, and if your game is balanced, people could or should be able to see what they could have done something better.
Yeah. If I can play a game and feel like, all right, I know what I'm wrong, let's play again, and I'm not going to do that, that also is a great learning tool. Feeling like you lost and there was nothing you could do, it's very defeating. So, yeah. Don't tell somebody that lost, oh, well, you could have just done this, 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 and this. That might not be the right time. Because, sometimes people are salty after a loss. So last thing they want to hear is a skill issue.
Yeah, that's a lesson
But
I learned from
there's
you,
that
D.
self-realization. Go ahead, Rick.
No, the asking if you want to hear what you did wrong is really important. And that's a trick that I learned from you. I've started to pause myself and ask, like, is this something you want to hear now? Because as the designer, I want to see people grow and I want them to get better. But you're not always in that emotional state to hear what you did wrong right after losing.
Right. And
Um,
hopefully you tell them that while they're playing. So if they can win and they do something that doesn't let them win, hopefully there you're like, hey, just so you know, that's moves open for you too.
yep, and that's the
You
power of
can
the take
decide if you
back.
want to do it. You can decide if you want to do it, but I'm just letting you know you can. That way they can still feel smart if they figure out why it's good. But hopefully you're pointing out the things that they can do better while they're playing, as long as it's not getting in the way. End of the day, people will get some things, they won't get other things. You don't want to be the person that's like, well, actually, you could do this. Well, actually, you could do this. Well, instead, you could do this. Because at that point, you're playing the game for them.
Mm-hmm.
Really, the critical moments where it's like, you're going to lose if you do that. So don't play that. What else we got?
So Shiftrack said some tips about directing away from suboptimal play without drawing attention to it. Play faster, talk just above the board in terms of what we're doing, engage with the setting over the mechanics, and have fun.
Yeah, I think those are really good tips. Because, you could advise someone, well, you should play this because if I do this thing 2 turns later, nah. That's too far in advance. Focus on what are we doing right now. What's the best choice based on the information we can all see.
Okay.
So
DT
yeah, that's
Buckle.
really good tips there.
The best way to get someone into the flow is to have a sufficiently difficult challenge with sufficient skill. It's tough to balance, but when it's done right, it'll really hook someone in. Do you have any examples of beatdowns that have turned into return players?
I remember we went to a convention once and we taught this guy John Ken, and I can't remember if he won or lost the first game, but he might have won the first game. And we had some other like raffle prizes that you could get if you beat the creators. And he came back to our table about 5 times. Like we were whooping him, but he was determined. He was like, I will not lose. And honestly, I think John Ken has gotten a good number of players like that. Like, it is not uncommon for a new person to join John Ken. You get about 5 veterans, they just whoop them for the whole day, and then they don't lose after that.
That's
It's
awesome.
like it's a rite of passage. But I think that's just kind of like the nature of the style of game. It kind of is similar to a fighting game, and I think when people play fighting games, it might be a little bit more resilient because it's a very tough game. It's very punishing, but it's also very rewarding because usually what's going on you have full control over. They're not these random factors that are influencing whether you win or lose. It's just that expression of skill, that improvement. Like Mage was saying, that sense of, okay, I know what I did wrong. Let me do that better next time.
Awesome. So there's some examples of the question that was asked earlier. We've got about 4 of those to read, and then we could go to the next. Just going to read them off, unless you want to respond to any of them.
Yeah, let's do it.
So,
Oh, yeah, go for it. I don't have a ton of slides, so the engagement is great, yo.
okay. Johnny Tiger says, I usually play some stalls or take mana in an action economy game. You can play slower and appear to be building resources for a big snowball. I've definitely done that in Terraforge, where I've taken a few turns, played something really small, not done the most efficient thing, but because the cards are hidden in my hand, nobody can tell what the most efficient thing would have been. So sometimes it just looks like I got a crap draw. I try not to use that technique too often, but JC came in with in Warcast, controlling the open zone lets the player draw an additional card, so there is incentive to fight over it. This means I can direct the fight to the open zone and they still feel like they're fighting for something. This also makes for simpler gameplay as they're fighting over one zone instead of 2 to 3. I like that, JC.
Oh, yeah.
39. I'm a pretty crap at game design, so when I am playtesting, I'm trying to play to the best of my ability. I hope that folks will learn more being pointed out their flaws rather than giving my hand. So when I misplay, that's a genuine mistake on my part. I have thoughts about that one, actually, Dade. Do you mind responding to that for a second while I think about what I want to say?
Alright, which comment was it?
39.
Scrolling through the chat and got lost in the sauce.
You're good. I'm pretty crap at game design, so when I'm playtesting...
Yes.
Yeah.
Playtesting, I'm trying to play to the best of my ability. Hope the folks will learn more being pointed out their flaws rather than giving my hand. When I misplayed, that's a genuine mistake on my part. That's hilarious. Like, I'm really trying to kick your ass, but I just messed up. You made the game, yeah. It happens. This is sort of in terms of like how we've been talking about directing. You want to show the person strong plays. You can show them strong plays without winning, and they can learn from you doing something really well. I was actually playing the game with Kevin C. Shout out Kevin. We were playing Tic-Tac-Toe yesterday, and it was a situation that you brought up, 39. There was a specific rule that I didn't bring up, but it was a good play for me, and I was in kind of bad spot, so I did it. And he was like, wait, what? You can do that? I didn't know that. And I felt a little bad about it. But 2 turns later, he did the same thing to me. So, I didn't feel as bad after that. I was like, hey, well, now you know you can do it. You learned. So, I think that there's a balance between showing somebody the strong parts of the game, but not necessarily making them learn from their failures. It'll happen naturally, and that's okay. Not going to be able to cover everything, but you want to try to help them with that while they're playing, and not wait for them to lose, feel like they messed up a bunch, and then give them a lecture about how they messed up.
So I think what I wanted to say to that is 39, don't take this the wrong way, but I think you need to reframe what your goals are playtesting, if that is your approach. And I'm not saying it's a wrong approach, but I'm saying that maybe playing to your best is blinding you from other opportunities in the playtest sphere and teaching your game. Sometimes there's a game that I've played on another server where the creator gets a certain joy out of curb stomping new players. And while it was interesting to see that high level play as a first time player, it did not make me want to engage with the game any further. And I've even tried 2 or 3 times with that particular game. And his joy at seeing me fail was such a negative experience that I didn't learn anything from it. I didn't want to get better. I wanted to stop playing with that person. So be careful when you're playing your hardest.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, right, we're talking about the art of the teach. And when it comes to teaching, you want someone to learn, which is the main goal. Like, and ideally, be able to teach someone else how to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
So winning, playing your best, only recommended if they're really good. Because there are times you'll teach a game to somebody, it'll be like Iggy, and he just starts destroying you, and you're like, I need to play for real. And that's great. It's always great when that happens. But it's about making the challenge appropriate for the person that's playing.
Mm-hmm.
The main objective if you're teaching. John can jutsu. All right. Keep the questions coming. We're going to go to the next slide and we'll get back to them. But really appreciate y'all. And really appreciate the insights as well. We got a lot of knowledgeable teachers here.
We got another boomy slide.
Oh yeah, yep. I didn't put in your. You sent me another meme. I meant to change it. Anyway, ignore that picture. Build index for beginners. And this will go into some other tips that can help reduce the complexity and smooth out some of the teaching. But one trick that you can do is a stack or a half stack deck, which just means you're going to choose which card specifically that player is going to get at the beginning. And this can be really helpful because it eliminates a lot of the variance that comes in card games. Sometimes someone might get a hand that just sucks, or they get cards that don't work together, there's no synergy. If you just give them a certain number of cards, you can make sure that that's not going to happen. And it also makes it easier to teach it because you'll know what they have. And the benefit of the half stack is they'll have some cards that you'll know what they are, which makes it really easy to guide them through it. But they'll get up to a point of the game where now they're just getting cards randomly like they normally would in the game. So that's one tip that you could employ. Also, and this is something that I really like to do, is the mirror match. Or this is another pro tip from Carl, the half mirror match, which is where the whole deck or most of the cards in your deck are the same. Also really beneficial because that person can learn from what you're doing and then do the same thing. So like in what you were saying earlier, 39, somebody could, if they're playing the same deck as you and you do a strong play, you're showing them what they can do at the same time. You're not like eating them with something that they don't have the capacity to do. And I think that's why it worked out in my playtest the other day, because we're running the same deck. I'm like, anything I do to you, you can do to me. So if I did something cool, you do it right back. So that mirror match, half mirror, can be really strong. But any thoughts on that, Rick?
No, I really enjoy the idea of the half mirror, where half of your deck is the same and half of your deck is different, because it offers you a little bit of that variety that some people might be looking for in a game without, I guess personally my opinion on full mirror matches is it feels a little handholdy, but when somebody gives me something that's a little more tailored to my experience, yeah, so a half mirror is half of the deck is the same and half of the deck is tailored to a different experience.
Right. So I mean, if it's a game like Yu-Gi-Oh, it's like half of our deck is staples and then half are like our archetype.
Mm-hmm.
So I can still feel like I have my own unique creative decisions to make, but I can still learn what certain cards do from seeing you play them and knowing that I have access to them as well.
And it might spark that creativity of, oh, he doesn't have this card in his deck, so maybe I can do something cool with this other thing that he showed me. And it kind of creates that clever moment that I look for when I'm playing new games. That just makes me feel smart, like I solved a puzzle.
Absolutely. And you definitely want to have those experiences there. But yeah, I agree. If it's like a full mirror match, especially depending on what kind of game it is, it might just feel like, oh, we just kept doing the same thing at each other and nothing happened. So that's I really like Kara's suggestion of the half mirror. And I'll let you get the best of both worlds. Another big thing I would say is use low complexity cards. A lot of people make TCGs, and it's a lot of cards, which means you have simple cards. Not all your cards got 8 lines of text. Hopefully none of them have 8 lines of text, but no judging if it does. But the main point is, if you know that there are certain things that somebody might misunderstand or a little bit more intricate in the way that they rule, just don't put them in there. You know, like 2 lines of text is usually a good point. Is it the next slide? I think it's actually 2 slides. Can you click ahead 2 slides? Bam, I actually found this chart, and it might be kind of hard to see because the screen's not huge. But this was a chart of the average number of words on a Yu-Gi-Oh card by the type. We can see here that your average your average flip monster, 31 words. Average trap card, 40 words. So, you draw a hand of like 5 cards. So if you got 40 words on your cards, you're looking at 200 words, which double space is almost a page. That could be a lot of information for somebody to parse through and process and remember and reread. So maybe you don't want that many words on your card. I'm not saying that you gotta make a chart on here, but it's something to be mindful of. Because the less somebody has to read and information they have to process, the more they can focus on playing, and that'll help keep them engaged.
On the flip side, if you're a Yu-Gi-Oh! Championship duelist, you also get a thesis degree for reading all those cards.
Right, look at the pendulums. It says like 70 words per card.
84.
Playing the pendulum. 84. Imagine playing a whole 40-card pendulum deck. I wonder what that would translate to in an essay. Someone's like, what does your deck do? And you're like, here's an 8-page essay of what every card does. Yeah, we can slide back. Yeah. Any other thoughts on low complexity, or does anybody have any questions about stacking the deck mirror matches or low complexity cards?
Okay. Skill issue shrug. If your cards don't have classic combat stats, could vanillas even work?
I mean, yeah, it very much depends on the game. In some games, vanillas might not make any sense. And I'm not saying that your card shouldn't have any effect. I'm saying keep it simple, right? Draw a card as an effect. Deal this much damage, destroy, remove, interact with the game in this way. Those are all really simple effects. We're going to get more into why that's important in the next slide. Thoughts or questions about low complexity? And the last thing on here is just, again, somebody knows how to play the game. It can be very tempting as a designer when you people and like, oh wow, people that have never played my game, I should let them play each other. Not that that's a bad thing, but it's worth recognizing that a lot of the benefits that we were talking that you get when you're the person that's teaching and able to direct the game, you might lose them, which will create some other variance. And there'll be some times where you might want to see that, right? I mean, there'll often be times where there might be 2 people who've never played who play each other for the first time. They might not know what they're doing. One person might get it faster than the other and destroy the other person. One person might not allow takesies backsies because they're like, nah, you did that, you gotta do it, I don't care. So the experience can vary a lot. But when you're ready to see that kind of variance, absolutely go for it. But it's worth being mindful of. You might be like at a convention or something like that. Teach someone to play the game, and then take someone that's good at the game that you've taught, have them play against someone that's new, so they can like teach that person to play. So I generally think that if someone is in that teacher role, they're not like, I'm gonna kick your butt, I can't wait to destroy you. It almost gives you a sense of accountability, where it's like, I want to help this person do well the same way they helped me do well. They let me back my bad moves, I'm gonna let this person take back their bad moves. They helped me out, and I, could have made a better play. I'm gonna help this person out. The same method that you imply will, the other people who are teaching the game will mirror some of them, especially the ones that resonated with them. So you can use the people that are learning to help teach other people to play. And then you're really growing. Let's see. We got any other questions in the chat? 39 plays pendulums. Going for that doctorate. Another pro tip from Kara. Don't put upkeep cards in the beginner deck. Once per turn, once per round. Well, yeah, especially if it's like when you do a counter and every turn yeah, this is something that you might notice after playtests. Expect your teach to just be perfect every time. But if you notice, oh, this person had a really hard time keeping track of this card, and so did the other 4 people that played, let me take this card out of the playtest, or out of the beginner test, because no one is getting it or doing it. You always want to be updated and refining things that might not be working.
Absolutely.
See, anybody here that's played John Ken, y'all know it's a pretty simple game. But I've been in some places where we were teaching it, and some cards were just like, I don't know what this means, or this has too many words, or I don't want to look through these 12 cards and pick one. Can't you just give me 2 to play with? So like, you know what? We're gonna take the 2 easiest ones, and when we're teaching people, just be like, here you go, play with these. If they're curious, they're like, I don't want to play with these anymore. Okay, cool, you can switch them out. But I think we're all good there.
Okay, next slide.
Next slide. Oh, and this is something that you either experienced or seen. It can't be avoided. Maybe it's someone you know. Maybe it wasn't you.
No, it was me.
But analysis paralysis. I've been here before plenty of times, but this could be one of the worst feeling things in terms of teaching. Like, you've taught the game, y'all are playing through it, and that person's just sitting there and they're like, I don't know what to do. And I'm gonna give a shout out to Realchair, because he actually introduced this concept to me in terms of the 3 stages of understanding a game. So your stage is mechanical. Y'all might have heard this before too. But you got your mechanical, which is, how do I play? How does it work? What are the rules? Understanding how to play the game correctly. This is where I would say you really want to operate your initial teaching to really make sure somebody is understanding the game well and have the fewest amount of issues going forward. Once you start getting into these other realms is where the analysis paralysis comes from. Right, like drop a 1 in the chat if you like combo decks. You like combo decks, you're like, okay, I use this, and I use this to play that, and then this will combo with this, and this lets me play this card. This is where we're talking about the strategic understanding. It's like, how do I get the most out of what my deck can do? And once people are here, they usually know how to play the game already maybe they've built a deck, so they have something specific that they're trying to do. But this is not something that you want to be introducing, I would argue, to a new player. Unless they, are getting the mechanics really easily, they need that next level. This is something that can always come in the future plays. Like, sometimes I think people are nervous that someone's going to play their game, think it's too easy, and not want to play anymore because they didn't get to do anything like crazy cool or, synergistic. Which I don't think is the case necessarily. Like, if someone walks away from playing your game and is like, man, I wish there was more stuff. As long as you have more stuff, that's a good feeling to walk away with. They're like, okay, that was easy. It's like, okay, cool. Here's the deck builder where they got all the cool cards. Oh snap! That's gonna lead them into that next experience with more confidence. If they feel really comfortable with the mechanics and how to play, they're gonna feel a lot more comfortable building something strategically. I feel a lot more reward when they play out the strategy that they wanted to play out. But this isn't something they have to focus on. And the biggest one is the competitive. So this style of learning is, how do I screw over my opponent? And this is arguably the most difficult because you need to know what your opponent can do, what their strategy is, and how your strategy can interrupt with it. Again, this is not a place you want to go when it comes to playtesting. Or when it comes to teaching. This is kind of like what Shifrek was saying earlier. Only talk about what's above the board. This is what I can see. And as you start teaching that player, well, my deck is this kind of deck, so if you do this, you can stop me from doing that. That can go over a lot of people's heads. Again, they're just trying to learn the mechanics. Like, I'm just trying to figure out how I'm win and how to read these cards. I can get these other stages later. So, it's all just to stress. Focus on the mechanical understanding for your first playtest. Make sure that they understand the rules, hopefully well enough where they could teach someone else those basic rules. They might not know all the interactions and strategies and cool combos, but you're going to give them all the tools they need to find it. You have any thoughts on that, Rick?
No, I actually learned this concept from Chris Backey on his playtest server, VPN, I think. And it really stuck with me. It was my Bioforge game, actually. We were playing that, and they were like, I kind of understand the mechanical aspect, but the strategic and the competitive are so far beyond. And it was like a real cold ice moment for me to realize that maybe my game designs are a little too complex sometimes. And I had to take a break from that game, and I started developing other games afterwards. But it's a really important concept for teaching, that you want to focus on the mechanical, and in my mind, if you can get them to strategic by the end of the playtest, you've won.
Absolutely. I would agree. And if anybody's got any questions.
Nope, lots of turn to frog jokes.
Frogs. Alright, well, go to the next one. About to close this out. Y'all already saw this chart. Alright. Last thing we want to talk about are the feel-good moments. And these are just those experiences that make someone feel like they're good at a game, they're understanding. This is, in terms of like teaching, these are aha moments. You're like, hey, they get it. Oh, look, they did something cool. And I promise you, that feels more rewarding any cool thing you could do during the game. That person you're teaching pulls off that combo that you've never seen, like Johnny was talking about. You're like, whoa, I didn't know my card did that. It's, you feel like a proud parent or a proud teacher. So, this is kind of going off the last slide, keeping in mind that when you focus on the mechanical understanding, someone leaves the game understanding the rules, and that means that they won't be misplaying. That helps their player confidence, and that's a good feeling. That's the way where if someone plays and maybe they don't win, if they understand the rules well, they probably will under how they can improve. So if they don't win, they'll still feel good because it's like I learned, and if we play again, I'm not gonna lose. And better if your game is quick, right? That's why we're talking about cutting down the play time, because it helps that run it back factor. If we play a game that goes 15, 20 minutes, even if I lost, if I understand all the rules, I'll probably play again. So I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna lose this next time because now I know how to play. So focusing on them understanding the rules, especially being able to teach somebody else, those are two things that are really gonna make somebody feel good after playing, win or lose. But obviously, I should put win first because win is the top one. You play a game, someone teaches you the game, you win. Oh, I beat the designer at their own game. I'm so good. I'm a pro gamer. That's a good feeling. Nothing wrong with that, especially if you've applied appropriate challenge like we've talked earlier. They didn't feel like you just threw the game. Like I mentioned at that convention, the guy that came back and beat us after the 5th time playing was ecstatic. And then was lucky enough to actually win the raffle too, so all work paid off. So, I had to imagine it felt pretty good at that point. And the only other thing I have on here is, allowing the players to overcome a challenge. We talked about this a little already, but only give advice if they ask.
Mm-hmm.
Or, if you offer and they want it. They seem like they're really having a hard time, they're not getting it. But if you tell them everything, if you don't allow them to commit to anything, if they take back every single thing that they do, they don't really get to overcome a challenge. And it'd be like if in your life you could just reset every time something didn't go the way. It's like, I'll just keep doing it till I get it the way that I want it to. It comes a point where it removes this aspect of, oh, I fell back a little bit here, but maybe I can come up. Or they made a really good play. Is there any way that I can stop them from winning? And without that sense of challenge, validate the feeling of a win. So give them that space to learn and show you what they know. Don't feel obligated, or don't be quick to jump in and tell them. You might have someone who's sitting there and they don't say or do anything for 1 minute. That doesn't mean they're not thinking. That doesn't mean they don't understand what's going on. So just give them some time. It might be a little more time than you're used to. And, just make sure they feel safe to fail. And you give them those opportunities where, want some advice? You have any tips for the feel-good moments? Or anybody in the chat? Something that makes you feel good when you're playing a game?
For me, it ties back to that emotional connection that I talk about a lot. Feels good doesn't always have to be feels good. It's just feeling something in that spectrum. So feeling clever, feeling smart, feeling powerful.
Right.
Like even if they lose, but they had a 20/20 creature and the rest of the creatures were all like 3/3s. That's a big moment for somebody.
Yep.
So you just want these positive emotions, I think. And sometimes even feeling angry, if it's done the right way, can be a good thing. So an example was a player in Terraforge, Lucky. I don't know if I was in a bad mood or what. I played a learning game with him and I beat him in 2 turns. And I was like, oh god, I lost this guy. Like, nobody's going to hang around for that. He came back. He was ready. He beat me in 2 turns in the next game. And he's been playing regularly since. So sometimes it lights that fire under him. But just get emotional in your games. Like, feel something. Make the players feel something. And it usually, if it's a positive feeling, will pay off in the long run.
Yeah, even if they don't come play again, that's somebody that when they see your game out in the world, they're like, "I played that. That game was fun," because
Mm-hmm.
they remember those good moments that they had while they were playing it. It really wraps it up in terms of what I prepared for y'all. Hopefully that gives some more. Hopefully everybody can walk away with at least one thing. We know we talked about a lot of stuff. If there's one thing that you could take away, actually maybe share it in the chat. That'd be good to see what you feel like you want to try after hearing some of the stuff we talked about. That could maybe be like mirror matches. It could be stacking your deck. It could be having reference cards on your table if you don't already have it.
Stop yelling at
Question
me.
here from you. What's up, Burp? Burp in the house. I remember teaching a young boy and his father Pokemon. I inadvertently created an aha moment in the child's winning move. Oh yeah, they me be his dad and went home happiest person ever. Happiest little kid in the world. Johnny here is asking about, and I just want to point out what Mage said there. In terms of like releasing your gaming mentality around it, sometimes people want their game to be perfect. We're talking about feeling safe failing. Nothing you put out is going to be perfect. There are going to be problems that you have to address, and it'll give you more opportunities to improve, like Mage said. And I think that embracing those moments, knowing that it's not going to be perfect, but I'm smart enough to figure out how to fix the things that aren't, it helps you move forward. Because honestly, I don't think you really start buckling down and focusing until you really start putting yourself out there. Like once you know, oh man, people are gonna buy this card, they're gonna have it physically, and that's gonna be what it is. That's when you really start, screwing up how you approach your design. You really start taking it more seriously. That leap. Johnny was asking how you take feedback in a form. Say, fill out this form. Don't talk to me. No, I'm just kidding. We'll probably have to have another talk. So, I mean, there's so much in terms of taking feedback that I mean, like I said, that's a whole nother conversation. Best thing I can say in terms of from a teacher perspective when it comes to the feedback session is ask neutral questions. You don't want to try to ask too many leading questions like, so did you think the game was good? Did you like how these cards worked? So that's kind of like prompting and priming somebody into a certain response. There's a lot of people who don't care. They'll tell you like, nah, I ain't like it anyway. But you'll have I think it'll be a better conversation if you ask the questions neutrally, right? You don't want to say, what was bad? What sucked about the game? You just want to ask, what did you think about the mechanics? What did you think about the card effects? How do you feel about the pacing? Right? These things are very neutral. They're not leaning one way or the other.
Yeah, it's also more authentic.
Questions, absolutely. And just being curious. If someone says something, it might give you some feedback and say, I think this mechanic is bad. You could sit there and lecture them about why it's not bad and why you designed it that way and how you tried everything else and it's the only thing that works. Or you could just ask them, how so? Be curious. Try to understand more where they're coming from. You don't have to agree or disagree. You don't have to say anything about it in that moment. But asking more questions and trying to get a better understanding of where they're coming from is only going to give you more information as a designer. It'll keep that relationship positive. And at the end, you can say, I appreciate the feedback and do whatever you want with it. They're not going to like hate you if you don't implement the change they said to the game.
I actually have a question for the crowd that's here right now. What are some other topics you'd like us to address on the pop-up playtest server? We have a talk coming up at the end of April that'll be about self-publishing your games. We did the art of the playtest, we did sell sheets, and now we've done the art of the teach. But feel free to throw in what you guys would like to see, either here or DM us privately, and we'll try to find speakers that have the experience that can give a good talk on these topics. And let us know if you like these talks that we've done. You guys hung around for over an hour, so I really appreciate everybody who was able to make it tonight and throw into the chat with us.
Really appreciate y'all. I've had a good time. It's good seeing old faces. Looks like Johnny's trying to challenge Cuba and John Ken. Watch out. I'm your champ. But yeah, if there's anything else that y'all think would be interesting to talk about, definitely let us know. If there's something that y'all are particularly interested in that you want to talk about, we have some very impressive people in the chat. We got streamers, we got game store owners, we got coders, we got bakers,
we even have Kara.
Martial artists. Oh no, I was talking about Kara the whole time.
Oh shoot.
I'll just joke. But yeah. So yeah, let's just go to the last slide and close it out.
Okay.
And so thank y'all again. Teach us your games. We love learning games. I know me and Rec play a ton of games.
It's true.
And if y'all have a game and you're like, hey, you want to learn my game? Maybe you're like, hey, do you have any tips on maybe teaching this game? Maybe you're having a hard time with something. I'm very much happy to help with that. If you're like, how do I reduce my win condition without making the game boring in 5 minutes? I like helping with that. So, I'm not here just to talk about this stuff. I'm here to be a resource to everybody. So, if there's any way I can help, let me know.
That reminded me of a tip I meant to throw out earlier, but I was waiting for the right slide to come up. Most of us here use online platforms like TTS to test our games. Take advantage of that fact by having pre-saved setups for like the middle of the game where it's your teaching game module. And you just load in, and then you can reset and have the full game if they want to rack it up and run it back.
Oh yeah.
Use the tools that are available,
Yeah,
I
that's
guess.
huge. You just save the table. You know, it's part of being prepared.
I'm curious.
Absolutely. Buckle said, "How about the art of the playtest?" Missed that. I was 2 weeks ago. Definitely implementing feedback. Have a talk about how to know what feedback to take, which feedback not to take. Ask for feedback. That'd definitely be a good one. Record trying trigger saying rock paper scissors is random.
Did I say that? That's crazy.
He also said it was to trigger me, so it didn't.
Diffused. Mage came up with, I'm curious how many people have had Dmajor play their game. I'd be curious to see how he could easily explain our games or how to win our games, and that could give us insight.
Yeah, if y'all want me to teach your games, I love to do that too.
Oh, for a sweet $50, you could send Dmajor a copy of your game and he'll play it with his father.
I'll teach my dad or record a video. And use it for whatever marketing purposes you want. We really appreciate y'all. We ain't gonna keep y'all any longer. Hopefully some people stick around and play some games. But it was great having y'all. And that's the end.
Have a great night, everyone.